Hey, all you curious folk. We're back here with Space Peregrination, and I've managed to fix those two lovely bugs from the intro video. Um, but weren't bugs, they were actually new features that I was working on, and at the time they were working as intended. But jokes aside, let's dig into these two bugs and see what caused them and how we fixed them. This is quite a bit of a fun process for me. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that don't really like fixing their bugs, trying to get to the root cause of these things, but it's kind of quite enjoyable for me. I like to dig in, find out what I've done, like add all those little extra steps of logging, and then usually at the end of the day you end up improving upon what you had before. So it's kind of, yeah, you learn stuff, you improve on it, and everything works much better. Alright, so first there was that big bug the big bug right at the end that kind of killed everything, and even the game wouldn't even run at that point. So after looking through the logs, the problem with that was actually my logging. So let's first take a little look at my my log utility class, Mr. Static Class log here. I've kind of made this just to give me an easier way to be able to do my logging using Unity's logging with the debug.log, and also be able to write to the disk when I want to be able to write to the disk. So you see here I've got, let's say, so this is the basic info logging method. So what I've got here is just a boolean comes in whether or not to write to the disk, and then the log file string. The log as a string. Alright, so the first thing I just pass that into Unity's debug.log, so it shows up in the console, so that's nice, so I can see it. And then if I'm writing to disk, I'll go ahead and use my write to disk method as well. So I made the distinction for writing to disk as an option only for the info logs, as I was using that for checking if the thrusters were connected to the console, which is something I'll probably have to explain at some other point. But there was a lot of noisy logging that I didn't really need to write to the disk. There's no point. I just wanted to see it in Unity's logging console, just so I could see what's going on while I'm doing it. So I made that little distinction there so it shows up. So you can see here the regular just info log class method that just sends true into this one, so that by default, if you're just using straight up info without specifying whether to write to the disk, it will just write to the disk. And I've also got the version, the same deal, but I've got the version where you can pass in the arguments, and then it will format the log into a using the string formatting, and that's available in C#. And yeah, Unity has a method for that as well. So the problem that was crashing, well, kind of crashing the game, not letting anything run, not letting anything show up, was actually the write to disk method down here. So write to disk, I thought I was being, let's say, smart by starting to do a rotating log. So the log reaches, I'd only just added the method, the function. So the log just, so I want to say, the log reaches 1 megabyte in size, and then rename the log using the current time, and then start a new log next time around. The only problem was I was using just a straight up system.datetime.now. I didn't realize that this was a problem at the time. It just seemed kind of, yeah, sure, whatever. It'll just pop out the date time. It'll be in the log file right in the middle, so I can see the time, and that's all hunky-dory. But as I was looking through the error logs, it was suggesting that during this copy method here, it was saying that it either can't find the original file to copy, which is silly, obviously can because it just wrote to it, or it couldn't find the destination path, which is also silly because it's in the same place. And I was like, what the hell's going on? So I popped over to good old, let's get rid of that, good old the .NET API, what do you call it, documentation. And as I was scrolling through here and looking at these example outputs, I noticed that the date here had forward slashes in it. So obviously when I was just using this purely, it was writing it as if there was looking for extra folders, extra path in the Windows directory. So that was the whole thing. It was just the formatting was wrong. The string had forward slashes in it when it shouldn't have, and the copy method thought that was a folder path, so it couldn't find it and then errored out. And then because that errored out like right at the start of the game beginning, because there was some initial logging, writing to disk, errored out, and then everything kind of failed from there. So I just added on the toString and then did the formatting with the year, month, day, hour, minute, second. So that completely fixed it, no problem, easy, hunky-dory, and everything was good after that. No more logging problems. I'm thinking of probably doing the rotating logs, having some kind of limit, and maybe increasing the size. I'm not sure, because I'm kind of thinking maybe send the log files to some, say when if I get the game out to some kind of beta, I want to send the log files to myself so I can read them. I don't want them being too big. Maybe a megabyte's pretty good. Send that, but I don't want to fill up the hard drive with logs. So I'm thinking maybe 5 to 10 log files that rotate, and I'll have to figure out how I'm going to do that. Right now it's the logs are just being put into the resources directory in the Unity project, which is kind of dumb, but I just picked that because that was easy enough to access and easy to just reference it. Alright, so now on to the other problem we had, which was the removing, so you go over to the ship builder. So I had, so you wanted to, remove one of the, so you're drawing, let's put that there. So you wanted to remove this block. So before it removed it, but it didn't save it. And that was in the video. For some reason, when I did that in real life, I couldn't replicate it. It only happened in the video where I couldn't get rid of that extra wall. The wall disappeared, but the character wasn't able to walk through it. Can walk through it now. That's all good. So before it would just get stuck here as if there was a wall, but obviously there wasn't one graphically. So that problem ended up being with just the way that I was loading in the saved ship. So what I had done is I had this an array of bools that was populated on normal loading of the game, populated for every wall, like every solid structure. I'd say, hey, there's a solid wall here, boom, put that true, and then when I'm walking around in the ship, it checks if there's a solid in front of you and doesn't let you go there if there is one. So this line I completely forgot to put it in, wasn't there, so the game thought that it was solid. So that was that silly thing. And there was while I was playing with it, I did come across an issue with, say, a design like this one. I didn't put anything to stop the character from walking out into space on the grid. Because you see the ship is a grid. It's a grid object. It lives on the grid, and while you're walking on the ship, you're walking without physics on this 2D grid. So if I play around with this, I have a cell outline. Oops, not here. Let me expand this. If I stick this in here, alright, so now we can see the grid. So the grid is everywhere. You can see the grid. The grid is part of the ship. So if I hop onto the ship and start driving, so you see the grid is the ship. They are one and the same. It moves independently of everything else. The grid is part of the ship. So when you're on the ship, you are walking on the grid. So before, I had nothing stopping the character from walking out into space. They would go into space and they would just move as if they were walking on the ground. It looked completely silly. Yeah, it was just ridiculous. So for that, I did a similar idea to the solids. I made an array of bools that is populated with void or empty cells. So all the empty cells, initially that gets populated as all full of true values. They're all empty until you put something there. So when the tiles get put in there, sets that square to false, and the so like the structures, the walls, the machines, when they get put in there, it sets that to false. So then that lets your character walk on top of it. That's about it. That was those two things that fixed that completely. That's all hunky-dory. I do want to add the ability to kind of, let's say, so if in combat or something, part of the walls of the ship get damaged, or there's a hole in the wall or whatever, you should be able to take your guy or girl anywhere. So when you reach the edge here, it will hop out into the physics world, and then you'll be using your spacesuit and your jetpack or whatever, just the same way as if you were coming to this, the airlock object specifically, which was designed it's just very specifically, this is how you get out, and you go into the physics world, and that's how you get in. So I'll do something similar to that, but hopefully more seamless. So say you just keep walking and it goes straight out, and you turn into, you get a rigid body back on there, and you go back out into the world and you're floating again. I haven't quite worked out how I'm going to do that yet, but that is definitely the plan, because I think that's cool. It'd be nice to maybe you have little holes in your ship you can pop out if you want to, but if I ever do some kind of like boarding mechanism, that might be a little bit annoying. It'd be a little bit silly if you're going to leave a hole in your ship and then the bad guys can just pop in and have their way with your ship, and you'd have no idea what's going on. And yeah, so that's probably about it for now. Fixed those two bugs. Really happy with that. I with the logging, I did actually completely rewrote all this. This was all done using very ugly. It was hideous. It was very static. I was checking a file directly. I wasn't even using this file info object, which I only learned about after I found the bug, and then I was playing around with it. This file info class is very nice. Lets you check if the file exists. You can create the file from it, and it gives you a stream writer, and you can write lines straight to it. You can append as an append method, and it gives you a writer as well, and it just appends to the end of the file. Refresh it, get the length of the file. Ooh, such a good class. But yeah, I had to completely redo this. It's way nicer now. I'm much happier. I'm thinking probably in the future I'll change this now into UTC time, just so maybe if I do get people playing this game in different time zones, I kind of want to at least keep track of, keep kind of a standard going, just so we don't have like, yeah, all sorts of random time. And I hate dealing with time zones. But yeah, that's awesome. If there's anything you guys want want me to go over, anything interesting you think you might want to know about, let me know in the comments, and I'll do my best to talk about it. Awesome. Thanks. See you guys next time.